and welcome to week 5, lecture number 2. In this lecture, I'm going to be talking about the things that we should consider for the first week of class. What's important to launch a good course? And I'm going to start by telling you about a professor that I personally had at a major university. I'm not going to say which one, but this professor would come in every Thursday night, 3-hour course. He would come in late every Thursday night, and he carried with him an old cardboard box. And he would shuffle through the papers in that cardboard box, and he would pull out something that interested him at that moment, and then he would talk about that. And then when he finished, he'd put that paper back, shuffle through the box again, pull out something, and talk about it. Well, hopefully that's not how we're going to launch our successful course. I'm sure at one time or another you've had a professor that was similar to that one that I just described to you. But let's not worry about the past. Let's look at the future. And what I find when I'm teaching my courses, especially online courses, is, as I've said many times, I like to get to know my students. So I provide many opportunities in the discussion, in the email, and even sometimes texting my students to kind of get to know them. I want to find out if they have the syllabus, if they have the textbook, if they have questions. I also like to do a little promo because I want to give the students an idea of what they're going to be studying in this particular course. And I find when I do talk with my new students, sometimes they'll say, well, it didn't sound like it was going to be a very exciting first module or second module or whatever. But now that you've told me more about it, I think I'm going to be interested. I also find when I get to talk with my students or interact even through the discussion or maybe through email, that I can kind of also promote myself. I can give them a little bit about my background on the topic, and I think that makes that kind of professor more approachable. Suddenly the students are saying, wow, this professor does know what she or he is talking about. They've had some experiences, and I hope they're going to share those in the class. It also promotes you because students will start talking about you. And then pretty soon you'll start getting students recommending you as a professor. So it's never too late to make a good first impression. In this lecture, I'm going to give you several tips or techniques for starting or launching a successful course. And I didn't put these in any particular order. I just took them from many things I've read, textbooks I've read, websites, and my own personal teaching experiences. So as you go through these techniques with me in this lecture, think about what order you think they should go in. Do you think one of these topics is going to be more important than another? Remember that students equate the course with you. You're the person who's in charge of that course and the delivery of that instruction. So it's important to make a good first impression. I find that it's also important when you first meet your students to be dressed appropriately. So if you want to have a very casual class where students can, kind of come and go, kind of loosely organized, then feel free to dress in a sweatshirt if that's the way you want to convey yourself to the students. You may remember that in our very first lecture of week 1, I was dressed in a black jacket. And I wanted to show the impression that I was the professor for the course and that I was the one that had the knowledge that I was going to be conveying to the students. Not only do you want to look professional, but you want to start your first lecture with the name of the course and the course number and your name. That way the students know that they're in the right class, and they also learn how you should be addressed from them. So that makes them feel even more comfortable on that very first week. Now, another thing that you need to look at is look around. Does your video look cluttered in the back? Sometimes I do my video shoots in my office, and sometimes I do them in other places. But I always try to have a background that shows it's plain and not cluttered, because I don't want my class to be cluttered. I want the students to know exactly what they're supposed to do and when it's due. I post those course expectations in the very first few lines of my course. And I invite students to read through what they're going to get from me and what I expect to get from them. After they've read that, I ask them to please send me a note in the discussion or send me an email, letting me know if they have any questions or concerns, or if they didn't understand something that was presented in the course expectations. The next thing that I try to do is introduce the students to the content. And the very first week, I don't give a lot of overview. I don't give a lot of detail about the course. Instead, I do almost a promotion of the course and letting them know the topics that we're going to be covering. But I don't go into a lot of detail. And I've learned that over the years. I find that some students will drop, some more students will register, and then those who are coming in miss that detail. So I usually wait until the second week to give more details about what the course is going to be about and how I'm going to run the class. The next technique that I want to share with you is something called buyer's remorse. And you don't want to have that in your course, especially when you're launching a course that you want to be very successful. If you talk to marketing experts, they'll tell you that buyer's remorse is when a buyer is holding two conflicting ideas in their mind at the same time. They bought a product, they think they like it, but they're worried that they paid too much, they bought too soon, and many of those things. And I'm sure you all had that same experience in something that you have bought. You want to make sure when you're launching a new course that your students are excited about the course and they are 100% sure in their minds that they registered for the right course. Many times in my lectures, you've heard me say that you really need to get to know your students. But I want to share another idea with you to how to go about doing that. I use a profile in my courses, and I ask my students to answer several questions. I also ask them to please try to upload a picture of themselves, because I think if we can see each other, we don't quite feel like we're out there on a cloud all by ourselves. But in my profile, I might ask them to tell me where they live. And I'll say, does it get very hot where you live? What do you do to stay cool in the summertime? I'll ask about their hobbies. I'll ask about if they own pets. And open-ended questions do take longer for the student to answer. I do know that. But it also gives me a lot more information about that student. And sometimes I can bring those things back into the course for that student. And maybe I'll talk about what they're doing for their summer if it happens to be that season. But that way, I really have a rapport that I'm building day after day with my students. Let me recap the 5 things that I've said so far in this lecture to help you get that first week of your course off to a great start. And the first one was first impressions. Next, I talked briefly about course expectations, and you'll be doing a little bit more work this week with course expectations. Introducing the students to the course content. That's your first week, your little promo. Don't give them too much information. You want to make sure that you correct any buyer's remorse that students may express to you in their comments. And finally, get to know your students by asking open-ended questions. I want to end this lecture with another note to you, and that is be calm. I can't tell you how many times I've taught courses, even more than one time through the course. And every time I launch a new course, I still feel a little bit nervous. I want to make sure that everything is right for my students. So try to stay calm. Try to get to know your students, and then try to have some fun. Learning doesn't have to be all serious.